Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. Read with Rosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educators spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. Come rock with me and get down to this new jam. Reaching out to my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's the grand slam. I'm out. Talo falava, malo elele, and konnichiwa. Welcome to the 40th episode of the Reads with Rosa podcast. On today's show, we have a special host joining us, which means that I'm going to be sitting in the hot seat. As well as being an educator and a fellow podcaster, she was our first guest on the show when we launched the podcast on April 1st earlier this year. At the time, she was living and teaching in Texas, but a few months later, she boarded a plane to move to Japan. It is my honor to welcome back to the show, Emma Alatini.
Hello, everyone at Reads with Rosa. I'm so excited to be here. I'm in Japan now. I don't know how else to intro that. Shortly after our interview, Rosa had cut the video and was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a science position open. You should apply." And I was like, I'm not going to get it. But with her encouragement, I applied. And your girl is out here living in Tokyo, living her best life. So,
can I just say, like, for real, she's like one station over.
That's how close we are, y'all.
That's, just like having a sister down the road. It's cool. Honestly, fam, it's so cool. As Emma mentioned, she's here now. She's teaching. We teach at the same school. And I swear, she was super overqualified for the job, but I was so excited that she, that they interviewed her and offered her the job. And here we are. Just a few months later.
Here we are, 40 episodes later. Now I currently live in Japan. So, good things happen during a pandemic when you are interviewed on a podcast with your fellow Polynesian sisters. So I'm just super grateful to have this opportunity now to be able to co-host the show and put our lovely host in the hot seat today. So I'm going to start taking over from here.
Yes,
so everyone, welcome to the Reads with Rosa episode 40. This is our Q&A session. I don't know if you've noticed by now, I certainly have, that we don't really get to hear from our host. And so today I get to put her in the hot seat, like she said. So we're going to start off pretty easy. And, just the same way that she always segments her show. Hopefully I do the show just as much justice as, she does when she interviews everyone. So in case y'all didn't know, 40 episodes later, I would hope you know what our host name is. But please, can you introduce yourself, your full government name?
Oh, pressure, not the government name. Talo falava, everyone. In case, 40 episodes later, for those who don't know, I'm Samoan. 100% Samoan. My name is Rosa Alo. Full name is Rosa. So, like people who know me, like my family, call me Losa. Most people just call me Rosa.
I'm sure that all of our Polynesian listeners, just like we always do whenever we first meet somebody else who is of the same descent, everybody needs to know, what villages does your family hail from in Samoa?
Okay, so my mom is from Mangiangi and Lalomalava. My dad is from Sa'anapu and Malie, and also Lauli'i and Tutuila, American Samoa.
AKA she's related to everybody. Just kidding.
I think all islanders are related to everybody,
So we're just always making those connections. But where were you born and raised? You are, of Samoan descent, but where were you born and raised?
Yep, I was born in Tamaki Makaurau in Aotearoa, Auckland, New Zealand.
Awesome. And so you were schooled and educated mostly in New Zealand. So take us back to those times when you were growing up. What type of student were you like in school?
Okay, I was pretty shy, to be honest. Yeah, I was a really shy kid at primary school. Uh, I was a bit of a daydreamer. I mean, ask Emma, nothing much has changed. But yeah, I was just into sports. Just loved, like everyone loved hanging out with friends. The other day I was telling oh actually today I was telling Emma about at primary school we had like a little singing group. We loved to dance during lunch times. I know. Seriously, it was just, man, primary school was like my favorite schooling period. I know when you go into high school and stuff, it's like, yeah, you're growing up a bit more and then off to university, but definitely primary school years, I have the fondest memories. So yeah.
You were like the OG TikToker, huh? Well, you guys had like little dance routines and everything,
No,
huh?
I wouldn't go that far, yeah, I wouldn't say that, but I think the other, I was shy, of course, but what was really cool about growing up, um, I grew up around my cousins. We all went to the same primary school, and then when we went on to high school, because I was like in New Zealand, there are primary schools, which is from like 5 to 12, or there are other schools which are intermediate schools, which are year 7 and 8, grade 7 and 8, and then there's high school. But I went to a primary school that was from primary that went all the way up to um, year 8, right? So grade 8,
Oh.
and then I went to high school. So I grew up around cousins, and then of course when we went to high school, a lot of our church kids went to the same high school. So, like, I just always had older cousins looking out for me and my brothers, like me and my brother, Nelly. And then, of course, in high school, we had older kids from church looking out for us. It was always this like real, like, ainga, whānau vibe, community. And a lot of it was just through church and yeah, church families. So, yeah.
So, like growing up in the church, like how do you think that that's influenced the way that, you build community, like even through the podcast, like, you have brought in people that you've grown up with, you've had some family members on here. So, how do you think that that has kind of influenced the way that you are as, a podcaster, as a person, growing up in this type of community?
Man, that's a great question, Emma. It's a hard question. Man, like growing up in church, um, music, the performing arts, Samoan, playing sports, volleyball and Samoan cricket. Like, I think being a youth leader, being a Sunday school teacher really helped to prepare me to become a teacher. Um, I was really shy and I wasn't like this great actress or anything like that. I just loved singing, like I hated acting and drama and skits and stuff like that. But just all those things that, just the constant performances and singing and things like that. Even just like Bible studies and stuff like that, Sunday school, like I think all of that really helps to shape us. Like I went to Efakasa, Congregational Christian Church of Samoa, and it's just the life you grow up living, right? And you grow up in the church, your friends are there, your cousins are there, your family, and you learn life skills whilst learning, about the Bible, learning about performance. And I guess that whole, being surrounded by those people as you grow up, I mean, that's where the community vibe comes in. So when I think about this podcast, and it's so cool to be able to reach out to just people I know, friends, fam that have also grown up in the Efakasa. Like I've really intentionally have chosen guests who grew up in, like when we're talking about our Samoan guests, I've chosen guests who um, represent Efakasa Church
Mm.
in the diaspora, right? So, we're Samoans, we're living overseas, we growing up in the diaspora. And the reason why I have done that, why I intentionally have done that, is because I want to show that we didn't grow up in Samoa, but the culture embedded, it has been instilled in us, the values, our language, it's strong in all of us because through our church, through our village, through our ainga. Like, I think it's so important to show that because, um, just because our parents chose to go to Australia or America or New Zealand, Hawaii to kind of like establish the family, it doesn't mean that they left the culture behind. Like, they took that with them and then they passed it on to us. So, like, I remember growing up, um like, I just remember growing up in our household, and the reason why we have good fa Samoa, is because my parents were like, you speak English at school, when you come home, you speak, you use fa Samoa, you use our Samoan language. And I'm so grateful to my parents, um for, at the time I was always like, oh, it's so difficult, right? Because you're like learning a language at school, and then you come home and you're hearing your native language. But now, man, I look back and I'm just so appreciative of my parents for allowing us, giving us that space to, just, teach us about our culture, our language, our traditions. And then, of course, through the church, with performance and choir and all that, anganu'u. I mean, I know I'm going on a bit. I think I've gone off the question, but um, yeah, it's been so important for me to highlight that my Efakasa brothers and sisters who grew up in the diaspora are out
Mm,
there, and they're killing it, man. They're killing
yeah.
it in education. They're um, in the arts, they're creatives, and I just want people to see, like, there's always, a lot of, when you grow up in the Efakasa, a lot of the youth, they leave and they go to more charismatic churches, and that's cool, man, because I think, although we say God is all around, I think you should go and worship and praise wherever you feel comfortable, and that's cool. You got to go where you got to go. No disrespect to that, and I think that a lot of the times it's this these push and pull factors of, should I go? Do I leave the church? But what about my parents? So it's that constant push and pull.
Mm,
And so, I just want people to know that, there are FX fam out there just, really ripping their families and the culture and our Samoan language, and that's something to be proud of, because people don't talk about that. They like to talk about the exodus of Efakasa youth who left the church. And
mm.
then they like to talk about the negative stuff, where we should be celebrating and giving flowers to those who are so out there, changing lives, impacting, the young people's lives, whether in the classroom, whether in the workplace. Anyways, so yeah, just huge shout out to my FX fam, brothers and sisters, FX, uh, fellow FX people that have been on the show, because, man, yeah, when you grow
We
up in
out
the
here. We
FX,
out
man,
here.
even Anonymous, Anonymous Matt, he was on here a few weeks ago and he said the same thing. He grew up in the Methodist church, same thing, very, very, very like the if so similar to the Efakasa, if not the same, that same grind. You grow up in the church, you learn about all of that anganu'u, our culture, performance, it's choir, it's a grind. But I look back and I don't think I would have changed anything. It's just like live and learn, from those experiences, and yeah.
No, I think that that's like such a cultural identity is how people grew up, like religion wise. Like
Yeah.
when you think about it, our parents were in diaspora
Mm,
trying to thrive and survive. And the best way that they could do it and bring up the culture is by leaning on the community, right? And the
yeah.
community just happened to be a lot of times church. And
Mhm,
so I do think that it's important to highlight, right, our folks and our friends and our family and our community that they're doing the thing, right? We are living the life that our parents wanted us to live outside of our homelands. And so if it happened to be that it had to happen through our, religious community, then
mm.
that's the only way they knew how. You're also an educator. You teach all the grade levels from 6 through 12, but what are the classes that you teach in Japan?
Okay, so I teach grades 6 to 8, EAL, like ESO. So that's middle school, and then I teach world religions like multi faith, which is grade 6, grade 8, and then grade 9 class in the high school, and then I teach 2 grade 12 social justice classes. And then on top of that, I do, we're piloting a language support, kind of like a push-in model for our grade 9 and 10 EAL students, which means I'm in the classroom working one-on-one with the students, with the teacher in the classroom. So the teacher's teaching and I'm kind of like just moving around. The idea is not obviously I'm there to support our language kids, but then if I notice anyone else who's kind of needing support, with just with any of the work, I'm there. I'm basically there to support anyone in the classroom that needs language support. So yeah, that's what I teach.
And it's so funny because you always talk about people being like such a vibe when they teach and being a vibe and all this stuff, but you are literally a vibe. Like it is so amazing to see the love that our students have for you, and how every single time people are always like, "Oh, I love Miss Alo, like that's my favorite teacher," blah blah blah. And this year, I also overheard a student that was like, "Oh, you guys have Miss Alo I'm so jealous. Like I wanted to be in her class." And I'm just like, "Oh, she out here. All these kids love her." I'm like, I love that. So you are such a vibe as well in the classroom. And so, talking about you growing up in New Zealand and how that's such a huge part of your identity and, forms a lot of your identity, now coming to Japan, can we talk a little bit about like when did you come to Japan and like why? Why Japan of all places?
Okay, so so I came to Japan in August 2015. August. And that's the thing, when you come to a job in Japan, it's the school year, right? So New Zealand runs from like January, end of Jan, mid December. But then of course here in Japan, I think it runs on like similar to the US, perhaps. Like August, September. So I came to Japan. I got a teaching opportunity here, and I actually applied late. Like I applied late to the job. Like a friend reached out to me and said, "Hey, this is position going. Check it out." And I was just like, "Hey," because I've never taught at an international school. Do you know what I mean? I was like, "Hey, okay, okay." She was like, "You've got the subject area that they're looking for, so go for it." And then of course I applied late, and then I reached out to the school and just said, "Look, if there's any chance that you put the position out there again in case you can't find someone, please consider me. Here's my resume, here's my CV." And then I was really surprised to hear back from them because, our school is a Catholic school, and they reached out knowing that I was at a Catholic school in Auckland. So I was super grateful. So then I interviewed, and December 2014, before Christmas, I found out that I got the job, but I kept quiet like until a few months, literally a few months before coming here. But I have to say, why Japan? So I've lived in Japan before, and I've mentioned this. I can't remember which interview. But man, I love Japan, and it was actually when I came. I've done the JET program before. At the time when I came, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to be a teacher, but being in Japan, living in the countryside, having to grow up real quick, real quick, and be independent and learn how to pay bills and all that, adult stuff. I realized, man, like, I kid you not, I was waking up every day just super hyper and happy to go to work. And I realized, man, this is such a buzz. I really enjoyed interacting with the students, learning from the teachers, obviously learning from the students. So it was then that I did 2 years here, and then I went back home, and it's always been in the back of my mind, just how much I loved being in Japan. And I lived in the countryside, so it's not like, it's so hilarious to me because, obviously Tokyo and where we live now, I hate city life, right? And it's, when I hear people talking about how exciting Tokyo is, and I get it, I get it, right? But I feel like you need to really experience Japan. You need to, visit the countryside, visit those villages out there, and those communities, because there's so much more to Japan than this big city life. So that was really, I know I'm going on a bit, but yeah, Japan has always been in the back of my mind, and I couldn't believe that opportunity came up, right? So yeah, I came, and it was like I was just straight back, like I knew everything. I mean, what I mean is, when I came, everyone else that was new, they were trying to settle in. Everyone was stressed and trying to figure themselves out. And I was just super chill, man. I was just like, I can't believe I'm back here.
Mm.
It was just such a blessing to be offered that job. And I have to shout out, rest in love to my friend Karina, because she had kind of put me onto that job and said, hey, check this out. And we were excited because we were finally, she's Canadian Chinese. We were finally going to meet up again because we met on the JET program, and then she passed away. So like, when I arrived here, she was already on her way home, to go into like a home, so that they could, because she had cancer, and it just happened so quickly. We were we were keeping in touch, and then we just missed each other again, and then she passed away like a few months later. So I owe her a lot. She was a huge blessing in my life. She's such a great friend. Yeah, so rest in love to Core. We called ourselves hoolies, like hooligans. We're a bit crazy, we're a bit crazy, we're a bit crazy in those days. But she was awesome. Yeah, so now I'm back here, and still learning. Yeah, Japan, I love it, man. Japan is, I think when I interviewed Amelia, and we talked about this, the people, the culture, the food, the traditions. I think, there's a parallel with our island cultures, um, and they love Polynesians. They love us here. I'm just, do you know what I mean?
That's for sure. Yeah.
So
No, I
yeah,
completely agree with that. So then basically you went from teaching in Japan, did your JET commitment, went back
yeah.
to New Zealand and taught,
Went
right?
back to study. I went
And
back and studied, and then yeah, got quite yeah, and
and then
did
taught
my
for a
education
little bit,
papers. Yeah, I did my education qualification, and then yeah,
and then
so,
came back.
and then worked a bit, taught, like in New Zealand, yeah, and then here we are.
And now here we are.
Now,
So you
yeah, and it's almost like, it honestly feels like I went 360, man. Like, yeah, and I mean, I think you figured it out. This is why I love the countryside. Like, there are so many green spaces, and like, nature is so beautiful here.
Mm.
Not as beautiful as New Zealand, just kidding. But there's just so many like cool places to visit, and mountainous areas, rivers and stuff like that. And it's that, because I just, any chance I get away, any chance I get to go outside of city life, I take it, man. I can't deal with loud noises and, you know rude dudes on the train.
Facts,
Packed
big
trains,
facts.
packed in.
Yeah, exactly.
um, yeah.
I think that that's like, and it's crazy because a lot of people don't realize that there's so much nature in Japan too.
Mm,
Until you really get out there and explore in the countryside. So,
yeah.
like you've been able to now teach in three different like
Mm,
more or less three different areas in New Zealand, and then back
mhm,
here in an international school, a Catholic all girls. international school.
Mm.
So what is the biggest difference you've seen so far?
The biggest difference is I can just teach. Now, what that means is I can just I'm not dealing with behavior management, right? So, at an international school, those kids, they go hundies. And this, like, when I say this is not to say that kids at back home don't. What I'm saying is I can just go into the classroom and teach, and pretty much there's pretty much no behavioral issues, right? And so when I came from being in New Zealand to here, like I was really shocked, like because I never taught at an international school, and they kept saying, "Oh, you're not going to have any issues in the class. You just go in there and you can actually teach." And so, being here has allowed me to teach, to really evolve in terms of my teaching style, because I can just go into the classroom and teach, and it's small numbers, right? And
Small
that
numbers,
that
y'all.
that's what it is, right? Because in a classroom where you have huge numbers, that's where you're gonna have to. It's really challenges your behavioral management skills. Sorry, what I meant to say is my behavioral management skills. I haven't really had to use them here, because you just go in and you just get straight into it, and it was so hard to like. It was always a shock to me. Like I walk into the class and the kids are ready to go. But then in saying that, I found, once you build that rapport with students, and then you start noticing, oh, wait a minute, this class is not perfect. Like people say, oh, that class is great. But then you realize there are so many different layers to the learners that are in our classrooms. And so even though the numbers are smaller, and even though I say, oh, I can actually go in and teach, it really makes you stop and consider, okay, so I've got these different types of learners. How am I going to cater to their learning needs? So that's the flip side, is that it's made me think so much more about that. Like, who is in front of me? Why is, what am I not doing to connect with the student? So I'm still, although behavior management hasn't been a huge part of what's going on in the classroom, but definitely there are still issues there, right? There are still kids who have confidence issues. There are still kids who they're trying to reach out, and they don't know how to do that. They're trying to communicate. There are kids they have not been diagnosed with, with learning disabilities. That's a whole nother issue here in Japan in general, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. I know you asked the question, going back to your question. Yeah, the difference is I can just those are some of the differences.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you say about behavior, right? And so
Mm.
like, and one of the problematic things that I've come across with people saying like, "Oh, they're so well behaved." They're
Right.
well behaved because they don't participate. They're
Right.
quiet, they sit there, they're the normative,
Yes.
this is a good classroom. Well, what does
Right.
that behavior entail, right? And so
Right.
like getting and building that culture within the classroom,
Yeah.
I find has been one of the more difficult things since
Yeah.
I've been here. And, making it a culture of like, hey, it's okay if you answer a question and you're wrong, like speak up,
Yeah.
when the culture itself and what's been ingrained in them is like, if I sit still and I don't say anything, no one will pay attention to me. And that's okay.
Right.
So
And it's so interesting. I mean, I guess that will take us to this next idea of this, like amplifying student voice, because you're so right. Like, a quiet classroom tells me that there's a lot going on that is not being shown, right? It tells me that I got to work extra hard to reach that student in the back or that student in the front. It gets you thinking about amplifying student voice. It gets you thinking about student agency. It gets you thinking about, what's being normalized. Okay, like you said, what's being normalized, listen to the teacher. And it really becomes this, okay, wait, I don't want to be in a classroom that is one way, where the teacher is just telling us this is how you should learn, right? Because that's problematic. Once it becomes like that, then we're just saying, okay, the teacher's going to go in there, let her do what she does or what he does, and then go. But then the students are left with questions. So, you know, in some ways, when I sometimes think back to, my old school, and I'm like, man, I miss the jokes because the student population were Islander kids, Maori, PI, the odd white, the odd Balangi kid. But, I miss kids, because it was a big classroom with a lot of students, but the spirit and the vibe in the class was always going off. So sometimes I miss that, but I feel like I've been able, I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect. I'm still learning every day, but I have, when you reach those students here, I look at some of my girls who are now in grade 12, who are seniors, who will be graduating in a few months. And I just think, man, I remember when I first met them and they were like, they would say zip all to me, just so shy, no confidence, because it was always that, am I allowed to give my opinion here? And there are students who are really confident to do that, but we also need to remember how we're going to grab those students who perhaps are falling through the cracks of a perfect classroom. So,
Facts. I know. We could get into it. Like, this should be its own episode in itself. So, that was a big. So we're very passionate about teaching and teaching practices. So,
sorry.
but you're a teacher. You're creative. You are all of these different things. You're also a podcast host. I know you don't like to think of yourself as a podcaster, but you are. You just didn't you just reach 5,000 views on YouTube? So we out here, we doing the thing, we making big moves. But I do want to shift the conversation now to talking about the podcast and talking about kind of like all the things that go into that. So first of all, because my favorite part, and I know it's just the beginning, but my favorite part is the theme song / your theme rap. I want to talk about that. Like, how long did it take you to come up with the rap, the beat, like all the things?
First of all, I knew like in March, I was like, okay, April 1st, no matter what, that's the date that we're going to work towards, that we're going to drop the podcast, the first episode on April 1st. So everything was like, that was the big goal. So the interviewing and all that. And then I kept nagging my brother and I was like, oh my gosh, Lenny, can you please write a jingle? Please write a jingle for me. And he's super busy. So then he's like, oh, I've got some beats. And he sends me 2 beats. So the first one I listened to, I'm like, yeah, I remember this. This would have been going off in like, I don't know, 2017 or something. And then he drops this other
beats, okay? 2017 was a good time.
And then he drops that. And then there's that second beat, which is what we have now. And I was just like, how have you been sitting with this beat this whole time? So, everyone knows I always talk about beats. I love beats. I'm one of those, like, I'm such a beats person. I don't know if that's a thing. Anyways, I'm going to own it. Anyways, so basically he gives me that beat, and then Evo, she hears it. She's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you write a rap or something? I was like, yeah, whatever. And then anyways, during spring break this year, I was I was interviewing, but in between that time, I was just sitting on my balcony and I was like, hey, maybe I'll start writing something. Because she was just like, just do it, man. You got nothing to lose, egging me on. And it just, honestly, it just, I don't know. I reached out to Wordsworth, shout out to Words, and he was just like, you should record something like between 12 and 16 seconds. Like it's really a snippet, right? Like listen to some of the other podcasts and their jingles. But then I got a bit carried away and I actually wrote more. Like I didn't have an idea. I just kind of was like, okay, what am I doing here? Okay, I'm bringing together people who are doing things that I love, right? Who are out there ripping and being game changers, and doing things that I love. So I love education. I love books and reading. And I love music. I love the performing arts. And so those were kind of my key things. So then when I'm writing, I'm like, okay, we're bringing some creatives together. And, and then I suppose I should put in something about how, my comfort zone is in the classroom. And so that the rap is just basically about that, like this is what we did. And then, by the way, this is me. My comfort zone is in my classroom. But then also, this is the importance of reading. So that's kind of like, those are the three sections that I write to. And it's not like I'm not a writer. And I say this all the time. Like, I just played the beat back, and it just came together like that. Then I sent it to Lani, sent it to Evo, just to, because she's a writer. And then I sent it to Words, and I was like, hey, what thoughts? And then, so writing, it was one I did a rough draft. I had never used GarageBand before, and I just had to learn how to use it on my crusty ass mic, my crusty ass USB podcast mic. I shut down all the shutters. Like, I think I did like 3 drafts before I got to the final. And then Lani was like, you really should go, because there's a lot of recording studios around here. You can like book time. He's like, just take it in, get it mixed. But I was like, yeah. And then, once the podcast started going, I then became super stressed and super embarrassed to like drop it, right? Because for one, I hadn't gone to record it. Number 2, clearly it hasn't been mixed. It's a raw recording done in my in my living room. So that's the story of the rap. And like, I love rap music. I'm a huge fan of hip hop, hip hop culture. And I don't know, I can't, it just came together in a few like hours, and then I just kind of like played around with it. And just,
if you need a podcast, Rosa is your girl, man. We're about to start monetizing this. She offers her services only during spring break. So
honestly, it was so much fun. And I haven't done that for ages. I haven't like written and done anything like that for ages. So I felt like it was taking me back to youth group days at church. Us always trying to like flip the secular music and make it like Christian, like for the youth stuff and for creative dancing and stuff. Wait, it took me right back, man. I was in my element, just saying.
Y'all were like Sister Act or something, huh?
Hey, we did that dance.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, been there,
on
done
it.
Oh man, my God. For real.
But I think like the thing that I love most about like the theme song, or like I don't even know what to call it, your jingle, the intro music. The thing I love is that it like to the point, right? It gets to the point, like who you are, what you're doing, all those things. But what was your inspiration for starting the podcast? Because you had your Bookstagram, and then built that following, and then now bringing that following on this journey and highlighting all these different folks and everything. So what was your inspiration for starting a podcast?
Like some of my friends I was doing a guest spot on another podcast, and some of my teacher friends, they were like planting those seeds in my mind. They were like, you can do your own podcast. Like, it's cool what you're doing. Like, it's totally dope, but there's no reason why you can't. So, for a while, and even last year, people had said, like, you should do a podcast. Like, but, for me, because I watch and listen to other podcasts, I was like, oh, there is no way I can do a podcast. How am I going to talk on my own? And then I thought, man, what if I bring together, like I mentioned before, just people who are out there, man, who are, who are impacting other people's lives, impacting the lives of our young folks. Let's talk about the culture. Let's bring in, people who inspire me through education. So my teacher friends, and some of my teacher friends are musicians, man, they're killing it, right? And then people in the performing arts, artists who are out there doing their thing, doing the hustle with not even signed to any company, any organization. They're just out there like putting out their music. And then of course reading, like reading is a huge part of, I love reading, and I want, when I mean, how it is, man, I get super too hyper when I love talking about books. And I was like, man, if I can bring together education, people who love reading, people who are putting music in the performing arts, creatives, like those are all things that I think it's me, like that makes up a huge part of, who I am, where I've come from, where I'm still going. And so I just wanted to be able to. So then that was like, oh, maybe I could do this podcast, maybe I could. But then I was like, oh my, because you do this and then it's out of your comfort zone. And then there was so much doubt. But I was so grateful, like, man, my teacher friends had heard me on this, doing this guest spot. They're like, yo, you got this, we're here, we're supporting you. And, to be honest, at the time, I didn't know who would listen. Um, I didn't know, but I reached out to, a lot of people, and yeah, they were like, absolutely, man, we're going to come support you. I was really like blown away and overwhelmed by that because, first of all, who am I? Do you know, like, yeah, and even, we're all teachers and educators, but I think like each teacher just, has their thing, their vibe. And I wanted to be able to share those stories and show, we're all educators, but we all bring something so unique and different to the classroom. But in saying that and saying those are the different areas I really wanted to, that I was inspired by, the connecting factor is reading. Like I made it a point that anyone who came on the show was to share book recommendations. And actually, everyone that has been on the show, I mean, there were some people where I didn't ask them because the reason why they were coming on the show, there was a particular reason why. So I didn't ask them, to share a book. But everyone that has been on the show, yeah, man, they love reading. And I think that it's awesome. I think it's great that our young folks, or not even just the young people, they're grown folks, adults see, hey, look at that person who's a teacher, man, she's got all these book recommendations out there. I'm going to pick up that book. So I feel like when people can see successful folks, like everyone that has been on the show out there doing their thing, you know,
And they read, it's cool.
yeah, like why wouldn't you, want to check out? And I've had so many people like message me and go, man, that I've checked out, Sam's reading book recommendations, or Juana's book recommendations, or and it's been cool. Like it's totally cool because books are, reading is so important. And another thing was, I just really wanted to put out there that, if you can't hold a book physically because you struggle with that, then gotta shout out audiobooks, man. Like I love audiobooks, and that's, reading is not just about a book in front of you. Some learners, some readers are, they prefer to listen. So I think it's important to say that reading is so many things, not just this. I'm rambling. I know, but
It's about bringing like access, right? It's about bringing
yes.
representation. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it a little bit in my interview where I said like, man, we were out here, like there are other PIs who are reading, because I always felt like it was one of those things, like growing up, people were always like, she stay reading,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
it was never like I had never seen anyone else. And so I remember following you for the first time and I was like, oh my gosh, and she's on one, and she's doing these bomb like book reviews. We had all of these Pacifica folks coming out and starting to review books and things like that. And I was like, this is exactly what I needed as like a young reader, and now like I'm glad to be in community with you all and, be able to look at these recommendations. And, that's like my favorite part of the show is the ending when we get like the book recommendations, because then I just add it to my, Amazon cart and I just wait for it to go on sale. And but
Yeah.
there's other ways to access books too. Go to your local library. Like there's apps now.
Yeah. And I think, it really thinking about this makes me think about like talking about this makes me think about the types of books I was reading, because I tell you, I did not know there were Pacifica readers until I got to uni and I discovered Albert Went. I was just like, Wozers, then I read all his books. Do you know what I mean? Now I'm not saying, but it was so funny because even today I was randomly thinking about, man, what kind of books was I reading, when I was growing up, and I made a list, and they were I loved reading mystery books, but if you look at the list, a lot of the authors were Balangi authors, were white
Mm,
authors, um and it wasn't until I got to uni that I discovered what there are Pacifica authors out there. So being inspired by what people are doing out there, and then being able to promote reading, because you know, people know me as it's the Bookstagram account, right? But then shifting that and saying, okay, we're going to do a podcast. Like, it was so important that reading was a part of that,
mm,
which is why I had some Bookstagram. I had some of my Bookstagram fam sisters come on, and even when I reached out to them, they were like, "Oh, what? Why do you want me? You know what?" And I was like, "Why, man? Look at you and all the people you're connecting with through your Bookstagram page." And these are people who, like, one of them lives in Australia, so she's not only promoting Pacifica but also indigenous
mm,
Australians, so, and then Kealani's doing her work promoting Pacifica books. My Bookstagram is not just Pacifica authors, but I do everything I can to promote them. Like, I promote whatever I'm reading, whatever, because I feel like I have so many followers from everywhere. But it's so cool, man. Like, there are so many of our people out there. And when when we finally discovered, oh, there's a community, like, what better way to build than say, hey, here's a podcast where we're not just talking about books, but definitely not forgetting the
yeah.
importance of reading and learning, and amplifying Pacifica voices, amplifying BIPOC voices. It's all
Mm.
of that. It's all of that. Yeah.
Okay. So, we see, like the Bookstagram kind of inspired the podcast. The podcast has opened up all these doors as well. Um, so what are some of your favorite gems of knowledge that people have shared with you on the show? I know that it's been 39 episodes, right? So
Mm.
that's probably kind of difficult, especially because, like, you're all like, you even said throughout this interview too, you dropped some like gems a little bit, but like, are there any that kind of stick out to you as the one that you're like, man, I'm so glad I got that in a recording, and I'm so glad that it's out there for people to hear?
I think when I interviewed, okay, so there's this episode where I interviewed Moana Leilua, uh, and she's just done amazing things in the field of rugby, and building community there. But this is the episode where I cried. Okay,
I was
so in
about to ask, I was
case
like, is
y'all
this the
didn't,
episode that you cried in?
this is the episode that I
But there's
cried in.
nothing wrong with crying, everyone. There is nothing
So,
wrong with showing
okay,
your
here's the
emotions.
thing, right? So she's I'm super emotional. No shame in that. I'm owning that. I'm super emotional. But man, in her episode, um, you know, she talked about time is not finite. She lost her dad real young, and I think um because of that, it really drove her to just be the best she can be. You know, hardcore Ainga, her family, and she said we walk on the shoulders of giants, those reminders, about our ancestors, the sacrifices that our parents made. Like, you can never hear enough of those reminders. And, I had recently kind of like come back from home, missing my family. So she's dropping all these gems about ancestors and just those sacrifices. And so for me, honestly, man, I was just like, this all got me super emotional. And because I just completed my Malo Fear journey with my brother in July, and she talked about, sis, now you're part of the sisterhood, and it just hit me right here in the fatu, because I was missing my family. I was feeling overwhelmed and just still fresh from that experience. So she dropped so many gems and reminders of, who we are, where we come from, and,
Mm,
the village that's behind us. And I think it's so easy to forget that, it's so easy to forget um, who paved the way for us. And as Pacifica, as explorers and voyagers, man, like way before, Balangi people were on the scene, um,
exactly.
it's very easy to forget that. So, man, I cried. So I cried, man. I was just like, but there's this other thing that she said that she really made me think about. Man, it made me realize, what this podcast has and is doing for people, whether they be the guests or the listeners and followers. She said, what started off as a podcast about books has become a space for sharing people's books of life, like each person's book of life. And that was like, oh my God, I'm gonna hashtag that because it really kind of hit home. Oh wow, okay, perhaps we are impacting the lives of those listeners. Perhaps we are, doing something that is resonating, that, perhaps stepping out of my comfort zone and being supported by so many, just friends, and just saying, go, perhaps it's been a good thing, right? So it really kind of like, that was all part of the, when you think about that, and it just really hit home that, oh, this has been a cool thing, right? It's been a good thing. Even though I'm still learning and making mistakes, and oh, God knows what, man, So that was one. And then I really, Kanan Ene, who, man, he's 23 and he is flipping hardworking. He's such a hardworking creative. And I think, like, honestly, like, so many gems have been dropped by like, there's one question that I ask in every episode, which is, how do you look after yourselves? And every person that has come on has been super hardworking, whether they are an educator, an artist, whether they are, in the performing arts, anything like that, whether they are bookstagram. Everyone is super hardworking, super dedicated, super driven. They've had ups and downs in their career and the path that they have chosen to walk in their life journey. And then, when I hear Kanan, and he shared about how he dropped out of uni. Kanan is every song is a reggae song guy, right? He's super dope, man. He's so funny. He's really funny. But yeah, he talked about that. He, taking that leap of faith and just dropped out of uni, and his mom was like, "Hey, what?" And he's his own boss. He's got a successful business. He's connecting with, he's, worked with big clients overseas. He's connecting with artists, both in New Zealand and overseas. Like, that kind of stuff is super inspiring, man. And he's young, but age is nothing, because up here, he's wise in years, man. And so when he dropped that, like, I've seen him on TikTok, talk about it. I've seen him on Twitter, because there was recently a trend going around about your grad day, like, what did that look like, whatever. And then he jokes about it. But, I'm like, man, he's joking about it, but look what's come out of it, man. He just a leap of faith there. Anyways, and then just sorry, one more. When I interviewed Napoleon the Legend, so if you don't follow my story, if you follow my stories, then man, I love Napoleon the Legend. Like, I love his music. I love his music because it's so raw and real. Like, he tells it how it is. And in his music, he talks about just, the ups, the highs and the lows of his career, and where he his parents from the Comoros Islands, and then he talks about how his dad passed away suddenly, and then he had to go home and bury. There's all these like points in his life where he has really questioned, should I be a rapper? He got a master's degree. So he talks about this in a song, and we talk about it in the podcast episode. He got a master's degree because they said getting a master's degree will get you a job, and then he's making $7 or something. No one would hire him. He didn't know if it was his name. He didn't know if it's the color of his skin. No one would give him an opportunity. So he's like, then he decided he's really going to make something out of the rap game. Like, he is gonna, he's not signed to anyone. He started putting out his own music, reaching out, working with different producers. And he says something in there like, do something that will feed your soul. Everyone that has been on the show, check out the episodes, because those words of encouragement, those words of wisdom that people drop at the end, and the gems right throughout. It's just there are some funny moments, and then there's some real serious moments. There's a lot of emotional moments that have really made me want to cry. But it wasn't until Moana's episode where I finally cried in front of the camera. I was like,
Mhm.
damn it, Rosa. I was like, damn it, Rosa. You couldn't hold in your cry. Oh my God. Um, but I also wanted to shout out the small businesses, man, because just because I talk about I talk about education, I talk about books, um, creatives, but man, there are some amazing people I've had on the show who have their own small businesses. So the Finiasis, um, beautiful Tongan couple, their company, Not Artis. I've had Lai from Dunedin, her company Maikana. I've had Crystal out in LA, her company So Much Soul Clothing. I just, it didn't matter to me that they were a small business. They have a story to share. And so,
Mhm.
you know, their stories can also educate people, can in terms of business and stuff like that. So yeah, I think I know I went on a bit with that question, but just to say that there have been just so many just inspirational people, man, that have come through, that are yet to come through in the new year, who just have a story to tell, and just the layers of their identity that they bring with them. Those are going to be the moments that will resonate with our listeners. Sorry, I went on.
No, I think that that's like, I mean, after 39 episodes and if you could only come up with like a minute of response, I'd be like, girl, you gotta get out of here.
Oh man.
So it's so true. Like, listen to all 40 episodes or 39 episodes up until this
Mm,
point. There's a reason why you've chosen to um, interview these people and inspire
mm,
people with their messages. And so I think that there is something for everyone to listen to on in all of the episodes. You've interviewed such a wide range of people too.
mm.
Okay, so if someone wanted to start a podcast, what piece of advice would you give them after going through this journey of almost a year? You're about 8 months in now. Is there
Mm.
any pieces of advice that you would, you know, want to share with them?
I think just being organized. I know that sounds cliche, but um, I've had to be super organized. And honestly, I did not think that I could be this organized doing this. And um, yeah, be organized. Like, it's not just like there's a whole process. So I'm just going to quickly go through, right? So I reach out to someone, and they may say yes, or they may say, oh, maybe in a few months, and that's cool. Like, and some people have said, we will support you, but that's not really my thing, and I respect that. That's cool as well. So you reach out to them, and then if they say yes, I give them a link, and I give them a little bit of information, um, about who I am. And there have been some who have said, hey, why do you want me on? I'm like, oh, come on now. Come on, man. So, anyways, from there, then I send out a StreamYard link, which is the platform I use. I send out a link, and then also say to them, by the way, I just want to make sure that please share some book recommendations. That's something that people look forward to. And then from there, a lot of, because my guests are from all over around the world, time zones and time difference has been a real big challenge for me. So which is why I interviewed so much during my break. So during school holidays is when I do a chunk of episodes, and then we just drop them over the weeks, right? Um, and then, of course, after the interview is done, then I play it back, and I write the edit notes. The edit notes then go to, like, we have a document, we have a Google Sheet, then it goes to Evo, which I'm going to talk about soon. And then from there, she'll do the editing. And then I'll also have in the notes, hey, here's a possible snippet. Here's a possible episode title. And then there are times where I'm just so stumped and I don't know. And then she'll help me out. And then once she's doing that, then I'll write the captions, or sometimes she'll help me with the captions. So we make a great team, hashtag Team TN. Yeah, and then after that, then we start scheduling, or we do the poster. So I ask people after the interview, please drop a photo. So there's this whole process we go through. So we have spreadsheet, as I said, which we've had four seasons, not officially 4 seasons, but a whole season, split out into 10 episodes. And then, so let me just talk about Evo, because I've mentioned her before, earlier on, excuse me, in the interview. Eva is my friend who lives in Melbourne. She does all the editing for the show. When I started this journey, so end of February, I decided, right, let's do this. In March, I reached out to her. Um, she's Efakasa as well. We were doing online Bible study together. So that's how we connected. Then I found out she's a writer, she's a creative, doing amazing things out in Melbourne. Shout out Pika, which is the organization out there just doing amazing things for our Pacifica communities. Not just Pacifica, but, especially during these COVID times. I reach out to her and she's like, hey, sis, I got you. I'll start by editing and then maybe she'll teach me. But then it turns out she's just been with me ever since the journey started. So I say this to say that I'm not a one-man team. Like, Evo has been right there beside me, and she hates it when I shout her out. One time I started tagging her in the thing. She was like, please don't tag me. She doesn't want recognition, but she's super busy and always put time aside over the months just to like do this for me and to help me. We have long chats, and just so I haven't been able to. I couldn't have done this without her, and I appreciate that. And I'm not gonna get emotional. She knows, she knows how it is. That's just how we roll. Yeah, so she's a huge part of this. And then I've lost my chain of thought. I'm getting a bit emotional.
It takes a village, right?
It takes a village. And, and saying that, there are other people who are constantly, dropping me a message saying, hey, how's everything going? I see you out there doing your thing. I love that. Keep going. And that's cool because it's, in case you don't know already, I question myself a lot. Am I worthy? Who am I to be reaching out to these people? I have a wish list. We have a wish list of people that I want to interview, and I've reached out to some of them. They've said yes, others no, and that's cool. But yeah, I can't believe the caliber of the people, the educators, the Bookstagram folks, the people in performing arts, the creatives, that have been on the show. Like, so much respect, and they inspire me so much. And I just cannot believe that they agreed to come on the show, to enter the space. And I say it in the rap song, like, we're just trying to cultivate the space, like have conversations and, with creatives from all over the show, all over the world. So, man, I'm blown away by just these amazing people sometimes, like fangirling hard. Like it's so like, it's like, calm down. But yeah, be organized. Be organized.
Be organized. That is the key takeaway from all of this.
Yeah,
So,
sorry, 6 minutes later, be organized.
the fact that you do have any like doubt for yourself in terms of a podcaster and like in terms of you like interviewing and things like that, it's so wild to me because you are such a natural at it. Like, you come in, you bring these people, like you find these people to come in and interview, and then to be able to like cultivate this space for them. Like, I don't get it. I don't get why you feeling this way.
Man, I didn't. Yeah.
So you have been going at it for almost 8 months, grinding, finding people to interview and, doing the thing and finding people that inspire you. So what do you hope will be the legacy for Reads with Rosa in the future?
Yeah, I think the hope really is to just continue to cultivate a safe space, a brave space, for a brave space in order to build, to connect, to continue to learn, to continue to educate, to inspire. Like, that's the hope. And I guess we just, yeah, I guess dot 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 dot. Just yeah, because I might wake up one morning and decide, okay, I think I've had enough. Like, just a side note on that. You know, obviously we work full time, teaching is the job, and doing the podcast is something that I've really enjoyed, like, connecting with so many beautiful souls, and just so many, just, we always talk about on the grind and stuff like that, and to know that there are people out there in so many different spaces, just doing their thing, just ripping their families, just surviving, doing what they got to do, going through those highs and lows. um I mean, that's like, yeah, so just continue to cultivate the space for um just the open space of dialogue and chill convos, I guess. Hope, yeah, and I mean, I'm really hoping that we have, it's not geared towards like any particular age group. I really hope that there are some young folks, some of our Pasifika folks, who are tuning in, and if even just to be able to take something, one small thing away, I mean, then I know, okay, that's us, we're done. There's a purpose for this, right? So yeah, cultivating purposeful, meaningful, impactful dialogue
Yeah.
across
All the ages.
all the ages and
From baby
cultures.
to Nana.
Wow. So yeah, but legacy is a scary word, so you got me.
Gotcha. But I think that's exactly it, right? Looking at all 40 episodes up until this point, you have cultivated a space where people have come in. And I think one of the most interesting things is that, you've mentioned in previous conversations that you and I have had about how a lot of the people that you've interviewed before, right? But you get to see like a different perspective.
Yeah. Seriously, yeah, and like, as it doesn't matter who comes on the show, I do research, right? And I'm always trying to find, like, I say this like, oh, what an expert. I'm not. Like, I had to make that clear. I'm definitely not an expert, and I've made this clear from the beginning. Every episode, every person, I'm learning all the time. And that has been it's been a huge learning curve. But yeah, man, like, every person that comes on, I got to research them. And other, so many people have done interviews. Some people have interviewed from New Zealand. They've done several interviews because of their work through the creative arts. And so it's been super important for me just to kind of like say, okay, is there another angle that we can take, that another, can we approach this interview in a different way that also highlights perhaps another layer of their identity that may not be necessarily have been shown for an interview that was on the news, on TV. Do you know what I mean? So, um, I yeah. So it's been a good challenge. Even with some of the artists that have come on, they've done a lot of interviews. When Lani and Livy came on, Lani has done many interviews, but it was the first time Livy had been a part of an interview. And it was super important for me to show that he is also a creative. He is also an amazing artist. He brings, I mean, he is the man, battle him in Samoan, rap him, watch him rapping in Samoan. He can take on anyone. And like, it was important for me to have him in that interview, and not just Lani, because even Lani will speak to this, just the dynamic, their brotherhood, their
Village together.
yes, it's just, so I've having him in there just really threw open the convo, and that was cool to me. Like, I wanted people to see that he is also a huge asset to the Lani Alo music team. Yeah. And I've had some teacher friends that have said, "Hey, oh my God, I can't believe you. Well, why do you want me on the show?" And then I'm just like, man, the culture, when you belong to when you're belong to two cultures, man, that heritage and that ancestry, that your story needs to be told. Why not share your story? Like, it's inspirational to me that um I like Erica, she's half Japanese. Yoko, she's half Japanese, and but there's two different stories, right? And I was just like, we have two amazing creatives, educators who are half Japanese, but they've the path that they've taken, and now that I've met, it's just there's a story to be told and to be celebrated. Yeah, man. So that's it's been a good challenge. um and I know that I always get people after, they're like, "Oh, I didn't want to watch the episode, I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out, these are guests." And then they're like, "Oh, but I finished watching, oh, what a relief." Because I get that, because even for me, when I play it back, I'm like, "Oh, cringe." Like, you have those moments and I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I get too hyper and jump in, zip it? So anyways, yeah. We're off topic.
In true Reads with Rosa fashion, and my favorite segment of every episode, what is one of your favorite reads of 2021?
Okay, so one of my favorite books that I've read this year, surprisingly, now I say surprisingly is because I struggle to read Japanese books that have been translated. So this book, Convenience Store Woman, it was recommended. It's by Sayaka Murata. It was recommended by my grade 12 social justice students. So they were reading it in their English class. And then I was like, "Oh, is it a translation?" They're like, "Yeah." But surprisingly, it was really, really cool. It was probably one of my favorite reads this year. Um, so I recommend that. And then I also, one more, I wanted to shout out Tonga Victoria, who wrote Hyphen American, because, yeah, put it out there. She wrote that, and it was released earlier this year. And honestly, it was definitely one of my favorite reads, along with Convenience Store Woman. Man, we have to support Pacifica authors, and she did that on her own, put it out there. And I know they've got a audiobook in the making, and I'm so excited. She's got some other projects, and I'm just waiting for her to drop some more books, because I have so many questions about that first book. So yeah, shout out Tonga Victoria. Yeah.
Congratulations. Great job to making it this far. And I'm so excited to see what's going to happen in 2022 and for the years to come. So do you have any final thoughts? Anything else that you'd like to share, in making it to episode 40?
Okay, so first of all, I thank you, Emma. Like, I appreciate this so much. Thank you so much for coming through. Evo and I have been talking for a while. She was like, "You have to be episode 40." I was like, "No, I don't. Why do I have to be episode 40?" So we had all these people in mind, um, to kind of like to come and interview me. But it's like destiny. Fate had it. I mean, it's like it was
Wow.
destined to be that you started off episode 1 and that you're back here in Japan, down the road, episode 40, interviewing me. So it means a lot, sis. Seriously. As I said way back then in April, you are such a vibe, and it's such a blessing that you're here now, carving it up as an educator, doing your thing. And just to everyone that has been on the show, I mean, I know, like, I always try and make it a thing to kind of like shout everyone out on Bookstagram. I'm sure people are getting sick of me tagging them, but it's because I'm so appreciative. Like, I really, this podcast would be nothing without the people behind me. you know who you are, just reaching out, checking in, sharing, to everyone who's shared the podcast. It makes a huge difference. Just sharing a link. The stories in the space that we're trying to cultivate are just super important. These life experiences, people are coming on the show and sharing. I want those stories to be out there and it doesn't matter what part of the world you live in. We all come from different walks of life, but sharing it means that these amazing people that inspire me and those who are yet to come on the show, their stories are going out there, and it's going to resonate with someone. It's going to change someone's life. It's going to have an impact on someone's life. It's going to allow someone to step out of their zone and set goals. And I just it's all about uplifting one another. This is what this podcast is. It's giving flowers. Yeah, and that's why views and things like that on YouTube, like it's so important, because I know, oh my gosh, that means people are seeing this. People are learning something from these episodes. So mad love and shout out to everyone who has been on the show, episodes 1 to 39. I also, a big thing that we made sure that we focused on this year was the language weeks. So New Zealand has different language weeks for the Pacific languages, and so I was a bit slack on some of them. I will do better next year, but we Cook Island Language Week, Samoan Language Week, Tongan Language Week. Yeah, I missed some of them, but we're going to do better next year. So really made an effort to try and also promote through the podcast, having an introduction done in a certain language. That's part of this, putting our Pacific authors and putting our languages out there, and celebrating who we are and where we come from. And then, just mad love to everyone. One final shout out, and thank you to Abby, to my niece Abby, and to my nephew Caleb. So Abby did the Samoan Language Week. She did the video for Samoan Language Week, where we in June promoting Samoan language, and then Caleb came on to promote episode 30, which was Lani and Levy's episode. So mad love and shout out to Abby and Caleb, but also to my nephew Josh and Sounds of La Salle. They're killing it. Check out their song Dear Brother on YouTube, man. Yeah.
It's a whole family affair over here. The Amo family comes through, y'all.
Yeah, man. That's what's up. Yeah, for real. That's how we roll.
Rolling deep out here. They always out here supporting their auntie and their sister. So we love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we go, you already shout out some of the small businesses that you love. I would love to shout out the small business Pacifica owned Lia Moline, also on Instagram at LML Pacifica, for this sweatshirt Nesian Social Club.
I would also like to shout out Yoko, who has also been a guest on the show. She has a small business that she recently started. Check them out at coconati_676 if you want to be a certified islander. So check her out. Check the sister out, man. Support small businesses. So check out both of these accounts.
Awesome. And where can people find Reads with Rosa to catch up on episodes 1 through 39? Oh, Ticker, come through, Ticker.
Come through. So check out the podcast on Instagram. We post to Instagram and Twitter. That's where we drop the episodes. But definitely to watch us on YouTube, TikTok. Still trying to build that. Don't judge me. Thank you very much. Spotify and Google Podcasts. So everything, all of that is at Reads with Rosa. Thank you very much. And Emma, who I did forget to mention her podcast. I mentioned that she's a podcast host, but Emma and Chris, her friend Chris, are both lovely. They host a podcast called The Tea with Crema. Where can we find you?
You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The Tea with Crema. You can also find us on all podcasting platforms. We have recently launched on YouTube, so please listen along. And I hope that you will like, subscribe, click the bell for Reads with Rosa so you get notified every time that an episode drops. We will see y'all in 2022. Bye.
Peace.